pretty awful budget, really, for everyone, isn't it?
It's quite hard to see where anyone who's particularly benefited. I think it was. I guess it was aimed at benefiting working people, whatever that means.
They say that, but I've had several people calling themselves working people ringing up this morning saying, "Well, it hasn't benefited me because I'm now having to spend more money to get to work. I'm having to get no pay rise because my boss has told me they've now got to spend too much money on national insurance. I can't get one."
Exactly. Kind of yeah. I mean, I think. They're not facing a sort of direct increase in any taxes particularly, but exactly all the things you've said indirectly will affect the amount of money they've got in their pockets, which will, I think, inevitably have a knock-on effect.
And prices are still going up. I mean, I had a guy telling me that his bill for electricity and gas has gone up by a factor of 2, so it's now double what it was in September. And he says he's not using any more energy. It's just the prices are going up. Similarly, road tax is going up. They've kept the freeze on fuel tax, but road tax goes up. So if you've got a car, it's still going to cost you more money to run it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, as you say, pretty much everyone's paying to some extent. I mean, I think the big payers are employers. And inevitably there'll be a knock-on effect there because employers are going to want to make up the money somewhere else, and will that be paying their employees less, either in salary or in terms of other benefits or pension contributions, or will it mean taking on fewer staff, or will it mean not investing to the extent they would have done otherwise? And I guess also you've got to consider that whether they'll be putting prices up, and that inevitably will have its impact, as you've indicated.
And it looks also as well that what they were looking for, which is growth eventually, isn't coming as a result of this budget anyway. The OBR forecast 1.6%.
Yeah, that's right, initially, and then tailing off even from that, I think. And I mean, I guess what they would say is this was a budget to introduce some stability, and they've got other goes at doing growth-generating measures in subsequent budgets. But based on where we are today, I think...
But it's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it, to expect private companies to invest more in the country when you're taxing them more?
Yeah. I mean,
it doesn't really work like that, does it?
I think it's a difficult thing to square, absolutely. And I think, it's difficult to measure the impact on just general business confidence as well, and how that would impact. That will, if that's affected adversely, as I think it will be by some of these measures, there will be a knock-on effect in terms of growth from that too.
And in terms of what people can do, I mean, I noticed that some of the pension sort of changes, which are going to make it a 40% tax if you pass on your pension to your children, or after you've died, or if you pass it on to your spouse. That's not supposedly coming, I don't think, till 2027.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I don't know if I can ask you what you'll be advising people to do, but what would somebody who's in that position, what should they do?
As regards their pension pot, I mean, I guess as you approach death, I imagine just work your pension pot down.
Just take it all out.
I think is the only. I mean, there are obviously controls and limits as to what you can do there, but I guess that's what people are going to have to start looking at. At least they've got a couple of years.
And this is the thing, as much as the Labour Party think they've done something brilliant here, people will avoid paying tax as much as they can. So the take that they think they're going to get might not be there anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a fairly standard picture, and there is money, there is additional money in the budget amongst the many other spending commitments for HMRC to try and close the tax gap, as they call it, between what they're expecting to get and what they actually get. But there's a long history of money being spent in that way and not necessarily delivering, so we'll have to watch that. And I think that's a general point about a lot of the additional expenditure, which some people may say is needed, merited. I think it's, ensuring that it's actually spent sensibly and reforms as needed are tied in with it, rather than...
Well, they said they wouldn't do some things without reform coming first, but that's gone out the window as well.
It doesn't seem to be the case.
So, breaking promises, I think, is one of the things that people are most upset with. In fact, we're going to talk now to Graham Littlejohn from the Scotch Whisky Association, who's pretty annoyed, as many of the farmers are, who were promised all sorts of things, as were the Scottish Whisky Association, Scotch Whisky Association, I should say. Graham, very good morning to you.
Morning, mate.
Now, you were told, I believe, by Keir Starmer, or promised by Labour in some way, that the duty on whisky wouldn't go up, and now it has.
The Prime Minister, the then Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer, visited a distillery on a cold November morning last year, and he said in the distillery, a Labour government will back Scotch producers to the hilt, and that the industry hasn't had the stability it needs. Yesterday's budget increased tax again on Scotch whisky by 3.7%. For the first time in history, the taxation on every bottle of Scotch whisky will be over £12, and the tax burden is 70%. 7 in every £10 spent on Scotch whisky in the UK goes directly to the Treasury in taxation through duty and VAT. But more than that, more than the increasing of taxation on Scotch whisky, the budget yesterday increased the tax discrimination of Scotch whisky versus other alcoholic products. And that's a clear break of the commitment made by the Prime Minister to the industry last year.
And what does that exactly mean for you? You mean Scotch is more expensive than other drinks?
Absolutely. So if you go into a bar or a restaurant or a pub, or if you're enjoying Scotch whisky at home, you are paying up to 4 times more in taxation than if you were drinking the equivalent amount of alcohol as beer or cider. And that discrimination got worse in the budget yesterday when a duty cut by 1.7% was given to beer and cider in pubs and restaurants, which is a tax break which Scotch whisky producers and other spirits producers are specifically excluded from. You know, Mike, that Scotch whisky has to be bottled at 40% ABV. We are excluded from that tax break, which the Chancellor extended yesterday, and that extends the discrimination on Scotland's national drink.
And do you worry it's going to affect your sales or your exports?
It absolutely will. We know that from previous tax hikes that it's not helped the industry, it's not helped sales, and it's not helped the government's balance sheet either. We spoke last month, Mike, about the previous government's 10.1% tax hike on the industry last August, and the OBR confirmed yesterday that 10% tax rise delivered exactly £0 for the UK government. But magically, this new tax rise, this new 3.7% tax rise, will grow alcohol revenue from currently £13 billion a year to somehow £15.9 billion a year in 5 years' time. 3 billion more in just 5 years' time. It's fantasy economics, and it's something that we've warned time and time against. Increasing duty on Scotch whisky does not deliver more receipts to the Treasury, but it does harm one of Scotland's key industries.
Fascinating. Well, Graham, thanks very much indeed. I'll see if I can back up the industry a bit by drinking some over the weekend. I'll do my very best for you. Scotch Whisky Association head there, Graham Littlejohn. Paul Robbins still with me. I mean, that's a good example, isn't it, of what he calls fantasy economics. You know, they've magicked up this idea they're going to raise £2.5 billion over the next 3 years from whisky sales. Yeah. Well, they're not, are they?
It would appear not, and from what Graham says, and I think, as you say, that there's a disparity between the kind of forecasting that is headlined here and some of the detail when you go and look at, as you say, the OBR forecasts and what's going to happen. I think I think the point has been made a lot about businesses and employers and them bearing the brunt. Essentially, they are paying this to fill this £22 billion black hole. Yeah.
Which the Office of Budget Responsibility don't think they can find.
Yeah. But I think there's also, in the background, there are also changes to inheritance tax and to capital gains tax, which will affect those business owners when they come to dispose of their businesses or when they come to, or pass them on. So they are really being hit from all sides, the small business owners, and arguably these are working people. A lot of them. They're not lounging around enjoying great wealth. They are hard-working people.
They go to work every day. That makes you a working person, as far as I'm concerned. But there we are. Good to talk to you, Paul Robbins. Thank you very much indeed. He's with tax at Krona Eye, Associate Director.